Hi friends! I really wanted to take a moment to talk about my personal mantra that I have been going by for a few years now, which is love, light, empathy. And I know that love and light has been a very common saying. You could say it was a cliche or fad for a while there, but it does hold a lot of power within it. And I just don't think that it's complete without the word empathy. So I kind of want to talk about what that means to me real quick. So love is what we are. It's the glue that holds the entire universe together, and it's what creates our desire to even want to live. It is crucially important in life to find that well of love within you to live a very fulfilling life. And everyone has that well within them. It's just a matter of becoming aware of it. And to do that, you have to understand that life has its light and it also has its shadows, and that the shadows are created by that light. The light shines upon the forms that we see, and behind that is a shadow. In other words, we go through experiences in life, and they can often create some what we call darkness. But the whole point of empathy is to be aware of that darkness as well, not just of the light. So the light is this force within you, this shining energy that you are and always will be. It is also your deepest expressions. It is the fire inside of you, the light that shines from you, the individual of the one great dream. So we can understand that we are all one awareness, that we are all one energy, but on the other side of that polarity, we have to be accepting of the fact that we are also individuals. So, the light is, yes, that we are individuals creating and also co-creating this universe, right? And empathy is about recognizing those shadows and acknowledging that they are there. Instead of running from them, embracing them, gently embracing them as best as we can, so that we can be whole and complete, light and shadow. I see a lot of spiritual practices, people who are on a spiritual path of their own, whatever it may be. A lot of us want to just reach for the light and just forget about our shadows, or have nothing but bad opinions of the shadows that we perceive in the world. Empathy is about acknowledging those shadows, realizing there's pain within us, within the rest of everyone that's experiencing life, but not just turning away and going straight for a pain-free life, because that's unrealistic. If you're going to live in this dream, you're going to feel pain. And empathy is about acknowledging that. And instead of getting deeper into our pain, recognizing it for what it is. Or we flat out deny and ignore and repress our pain. And either way we get hurt. Either way. So there's no avoiding the need for empathy in this life. And what that means is that you're empathetic with yourself, and also that you're empathetic with others. And for me, I've come to realize that empathy is kind of about being egoless, or trying to take off the layers of our own ego, our own perceptions of the universe, to understand the infinite nature of pain and how our actions can cause pain for others, and also how our actions can help alleviate pain for others. But it's also about having empathy for ourselves and accepting our pain and nurturing it and nourishing it instead of ignoring it. Because when we ignore our pain, we end up causing more pain. People who don't recognize their darkness, their shadows, their pain, end up hurting others. Hurt people, hurt others, that saying. It's so very true, isn't it? Because if we have this shadow lurking within us, unrecognized, unacknowledged, I think we've all heard that, something suppressed is just going to come back worse. So it's important to not suppress these things, to actually acknowledge them and face them, face our fears, face our pain, and give it the light that it needs. Give it the warm, loving embrace that it really needs, so that you can transmute that pain into love, so that you can bring the light to the pain and make something beautiful out of it. I don't really like to watch TV, but there was one very cool quote I heard years ago on some kind of award show that my mom was watching, and it was, take your broken heart and make it into art. And I really loved hearing that. I felt like that was very inspiring for the world to hear, because that's essentially what it's about. You take your broken heart and you create with it. But if you are denying that your heart is broken, if you're denying that you have pain, or that you will ever go through pain, or you've ever been through pain, you're going to end up hurting yourself. We all go through pain. Even the most enlightened people in the world go through pain. It's not something that you can avoid, and it's not the point to avoid it. The point is to love it and accept it, but also acknowledge it and do something with it, rather than letting it remain a shadow that weighs us down, that weighs our heart down. We have to be aware of what is weighing our heart down, what is keeping us from liberation, from freedom, from following our hearts. What's weighing it down? Why can't it get up and walk and do what it was called to do? Because we all have purpose. We have millions upon millions of purposes, but then there's also the main purpose of, why are we here? How do we figure that out if our heart is being weighed down by all the pain that we're avoiding? You have to face it. It's not easy. But so this is why I say love, light, and empathy. Empathy for yourself. Empathy for the world. That will bring about beautiful transformations. So we have to first acknowledge that we are love, and then shine our light. But also, while we're shining our light, while we're creating, we have to acknowledge that we have these shadows, and shine the light on those shadows, and use the love to transmute those shadows into something beautiful, something that you consider beautiful, something of worth to you. But if we don't have empathy, if we don't acknowledge the shadows, if we're apathetic as to the point that we don't care, that we don't think there are things in the world that need improving, or parts of our ego that need improvement, we're gonna go through a lot of pain. It's unfortunate, but not shining a light on your shadow causes more harm. And it's just not really necessary. Your ego, from what I'm understanding currently, as I'm always learning, and none of us really know anything for certain, but my understanding of the ego is that it's this false self that we've layered on top of our being, which is made of language, mostly. Language and our experiences. And there's nothing wrong with that language. There's nothing wrong with those experiences. It's all in how we use that conditioning to shape our future, to shape our perception of who we are and what we're worth. So I think it's important to be empathetic with ourselves too, and to acknowledge, where did you learn to think you're not good enough? Where did you learn to think that you need to be perfect? Where did you learn to think that the only way out of your pain was to cling to the pleasure? Where did you learn to think that nothing you do will ever amount to anything? Where did you learn to think that you can't go after what your heart calls you to? Where did you learn to think that You don't have what it takes to be who you are. Where did you learn to think that the point is to be no one and to have no self whatsoever? I can tell you this. The point is to be limitless. It's to find your infinite potential and to not be weighed down by your ego, by this conditioning. You're going to have an ego, whether you want to avoid it, because as far as I know, the ego is a byproduct of existence. It is part of being an individual, and there is not a way to avoid that. When you realize oneness, if you have come to that point or eventually do, you see that you are basically no one, that you are everything. But it requires you to also acknowledge that within that everything is your individuality, is you being this person, this one singular self, but also the one great being that we all are. And I suppose to be whole, to encompass all of that, for me, I have to live by love, light, and empathy.